Welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. I bring you tips, advice, and guest stories about creating work you love. Whatever type of career or business you have or want, I want to help you find more meaning, money, and happiness. Now we are live from Hollywood. Hello, and whoa. Welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. We're here. It's Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and we're here at the Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, California, and very excited that you are here. So thank you for joining us, and we have a great show for you today. We have a wonderful guest. Her name is Lena Ehrenberg, and I'm going to introduce her in just a minute. And Lena represents what we like to represent here at Limit Free Life, which is a career that she has created for herself that is fulfilling, fun, and financially rewarding. And she's done it her way, and it's really interesting to hear what she has done. And she's the example of the type of person that we like to have here on the show to inspire you to create your own work life that you can also love and enjoy and feel is unlimited for you. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Lena to you so we can get started with our conversation. Lena Ehrenberg believes that success skills are transferable, and to this end, she coaches women who have created success in certain areas of their lives who want to have more love. For some, that means creating a romantic partnership. For others, it means mothering a foster child. She works one-on-one with clients and also facilitates a monthly Mistress Mind for women to share and learn in an active group environment. In addition to being an actress with both regional and national commercial and theatrical credits, Lena has held various positions within the entertainment industry, including stints with HBO and the Walt Disney Company. Her very first film, which she produced, wrote, performed in, and edited, was selected for inclusion in the pilot Disney ABC Television Division Short Film Festival. Lena volunteers as a certified coach monitor for the LA County Department of Children and Family Services. She coaches biological parents during visits with their children who are currently in foster care in order to help them develop better parenting skills and create positive family relationships. She's been a happily single full-time foster mama and is a world traveler. She's the recipient of the mentoring and coaching that led her to change results in every area of her life and help other women to do the same in their own lives. As an advocate for educating girls, employing and empowering women, and keeping families and communities together, Lena volunteers her time and financially supports charitable organizations that operate in both the U.S. and in Uganda. No matter where in the world Lena lives or for how long she lives there, she identifies first and foremost as a New Yorker, and she loves to laugh. So we're hoping to have some laughs today during our conversation, as well as some great information and education for people. So thank you so much for being here. This is a treat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for inviting me.
You are so welcome. We had such a fun conversation recently, and it just went on and on for so long. And I'm so happy just to get to know you. You're just a really fascinating and person and just a bright light. So I really enjoyed the day we talked for so long. So let's just start with how you got here. What brought you to the point where you are coaching and mentoring and fostering children and helping the parents who are in that system and just general background here?
General background for me is, again, first and foremost, a New Yorker. Mm-hmm. I grew up on Long Island, and I lived in Manhattan for a while, and I was working at a job and living in a very small studio apartment, as we do in Manhattan. And I decided after a while that I needed a break. Mm-hmm. I just needed a break. I was looking for something new, not only in my living situation, but in my work. Mm-hmm. And I was acting. I had done some regional theater on the East Coast and in the Midwest. Okay. And I just decided that I was going to, the deciding factor for me was that last winter we had 18 snowstorms. Mm.
Okay. I grew up in Boston, so I get it.
Yeah.
It's like,
so exactly.
Enough is enough. Yeah.
Enough is enough. So I thought, well, I'm going to go someplace where I don't risk snowstorms. And so, of course, I chose Tucson, Arizona.
That's funny because I lived in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't know that about you. Okay. And so I lived in Tucson for a few years, and it was really good for me. When I look back on that period of my life, I was there for 4 years, I believe, and it was really good for me because I had experiences, obviously, in Tucson that I would not have had in New York. Right. But that process of experiences was not simply about geography. The kinds of people that I was meeting, I would not have met in New York.
Right.
I think that I have the type of experience that a lot of us do. We grow up in a certain family, in a certain school, in a certain just with the same types of people.
Right.
And if we don't consciously and actively break that pattern, it's like any other pattern in our lives, we can spend our entire lives with the same types of people,
right,
having the same types of relationships and experiences. So I'm really grateful for that time that I had in Tucson. And then when that time was coming to its natural close, I said, oh, well, I might as well complete my journey west. And so I had one friend out in LA at the time, and I called her and said, I think it's time for me to come out to LA. And so I drove out, spent a weekend with her and her family. She drove me around, broke LA down into bite-sized neighborhoods
I know.
for me, right? Exactly, because it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it sounds overwhelming, but the reality is it's not. It is just a whole bunch of little neighborhoods. It's so scary once you figure it out.
It is, but you really need a guide. You need a Sherpa. You really need a Sherpa. So, and that's what I've found in most of my life, though. I will speak for my experience. I say this to my tribe, my women. I refer to us all as smart girls, right? We heard that all our lives. Yeah. We're smart girls. You're a smart girl. You know that. You're a smart girl. You know that. Well, part of my fallacy about being a smart girl was I thought that meant I needed to do everything for myself.
Interesting. Yeah.
If I'm so smart, I ought to be able to figure this out. If I'm so smart, I ought to just know how to do this.
Right.
And there comes a point in every truly smart girl's life that she needs to evolve into the wise woman who has been growing alongside of her.
Nice.
And for me, part of that growth and part of that leap for me was understanding that I don't have to do everything alone. And I can't.
Right.
We can't.
No, we can't. And I think for a lot of us, it is kind of a hard lesson. But at this point, gosh, it just almost seems it's just part of my thinking now that, of course, we need support and we need help.
Exactly.
So it's hard for me to even go back to that time when I thought you had to do it all yourself. But there was that time. And I look back and I think, wow, how ridiculous is that, and how sad that that's the thinking that we grew up with. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess in a way it's good. You know, everything has its payoff. Every action that we take has a payoff, right? Or else we wouldn't take that action and we wouldn't have that thought.
Right.
And so I think part of the payoff of that line of reasoning is it motivates us in a way to move, to take an action.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
But it's allowing ourselves to consciously take a different action is what's so liberating, and that's when the world opens up for us.
Yes, that's so true, and it's a little bit of a lead-in, I think, to the TED Talk that you're going to be giving, and I didn't plan to address it this early, but because you just said that, I thought it's perfect. So do you want to tell us a little about that? That's very exciting.
I would love to. It's very exciting, yes, and talk about loving to laugh. I've been giggling over this for days. I have the honor, I am just pinching myself, that I was selected to give a talk I call it a talk with a capital T, we all know that, at TEDx Barton Springs Women on December 4th of this year.
Okay, wow, that's
4
right
weeks
around the
from
corner.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes, and that corner's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And all of the TED Women conferences this year, the theme of TED Women in 2018 is showing up.
Okay, wonderful.
And the title of my talk I am able to share with you and with your listeners. And the title of my talk is, What Are We Allowing?
That's great. Yeah.
And the impetus for that was an experience that I had. Literally, I had a light bulb moment. And it was about realizing that I had not shown up for myself in a way that would have allowed me to attain things that I wanted to attain for myself.
That's really interesting. I'd love to just dig a little deeper when we talk about not showing up for ourselves, because I think that is a theme. That's a theme just going on in the world right now with women. And I think we're all, especially, women of a certain age, are all like, this is my time. If I haven't shown up before, I'm going to start showing up now. But let's break down the term, because what does that mean? Does that mean using your voice? Does that mean being seen more? What is showing up?
It could be all of those things. It could be none of those things. I think that what's really important is to really, we need to make this personal. I think there's a groundswell right now. There's a huge movement right now, and the world needs that.
Right.
We need that. We need that sisterhood. We need that support. Again, we've been trying to do this individually.
Right.
We all. I'm not the only smart girl in the room. You're not. Your engineer is not. We have a woman engineer in this room, and I noticed that, and I love that. And so we need that, and we need to be able to look to each other. The suffragettes didn't create our ability to vote by each individually staying at home,
right,
figuring it out for themselves.
Yeah.
It was the group effort, and for them I'm eternally grateful. And we have to learn how to make it more personal for ourselves at the same time.
Right.
Because I think it's the lack of personalization that is keeping a lot of women away from the movement. It's the lack of personalization that keeps a lot of people, men and women, from voting. My one vote doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or I'm okay. No matter what happens in this administration, I'm okay, so I can stay home.
Right.
Well, I'm happy for you that you're okay.
Right.
I show up not only for myself, but for every
Absolutely.
woman. So it's both of those things, and I think that the way that we start to do that for ourselves is really taking stock and looking at what are we permitting to happen in our lives,
Right.
by taking unconscious actions. And when we're permitting something, we're also prohibiting something else. If we're just letting things happen and allowing
Right.
behaviors to repeat, whether they are other people's or our own,
Right.
it's, if I'm allowing something to happen by not taking an action, it means that I'm preventing something else from happening because I needed to take an action.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's just it's the consciousness of what you're doing. It's really being on top of things so that you're not just reacting, you're not repeating other, old habits and patterns, things like that. I mean, the simplest example in the world is your email. If you get on your email in the morning, you're suddenly you're at everybody else's mercy and dealing with everybody else's agenda, and all of a sudden you're doing all kinds of things. You're actually allowing other people's requests to take over your day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that goes on with allowing.
Right.
So,
and you said something that I want to tie that to directly as you were introducing me, and I thank you. I love what you said, that I've done all these things and I've done it in my own way. Mm-hmm. And I just had this aha
right
the other day. Literally the other day, I had an interaction with someone online. I am on social media. I do these things. You've got a list of links that we're going to read off later for people to be able to find me. And yet, I do not post a Facebook Live every single day. Mm-hmm. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't get on my phone first thing in the morning. I don't check my email to the point that I literally have to put it in my calendar to remind myself to check my email.
That is so funny to me because I have it in my calendar only because I check it so much that my calendar is supposed to be reminding me, okay, you can check it these 4 times a day. So
right.
You're doing what I'm trying to do and
right.
frankly not doing very well.
Right.
But.
And the realization that I had about it is that you mentioned all of the coaching that I had gotten for myself
mm-hmm.
and the evolution for myself. And along the lines of realizing that I can get help with something and
mm-hmm.
I ought to get help with something
mm-hmm.
is I went for a very long period of my life not being in romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Or the dating that I was doing, I was having the same results of all the dating I had always done.
Okay.
And yet I never, ever blamed the men.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it's not about who was attracted to me. It's about who was I attracted to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when I was ready for that to change, I found a really excellent coach and a course of work that enabled me to make massive changes in myself. So tying that back to what you and I were talking about, this idea that we have to be on social media multiple times a day. We have to be doing lives. We have to be posting this. We have to be speaking here. We have to be on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other things. And I don't know how many hours you have in your day.
Yeah, I know.
And I like to sleep for some of the hours in my day.
And eat.
Right, and eat and go on a romantic walk on the beach with a man and all of these things that we say that we want. And then we're doing this. So my realization, my aha just the other day was I did not invest all the time and money that I did to learn how to lose my masculine behavior in personal relationships so that I could then turn around and allow myself to be coerced into running my business in a very masculine way.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Because I don't know how that feels to you, but this hurry up and got to do this and got to do this to create success, it goes back to whose definition of success are you trying to meet?
Right. And it is interesting when you do that, when you get into that mode and you're working a lot and you're just pretty much obsessed with what's on your to-do list. It's an interesting question. Are you you might tell yourself you're showing up for yourself because you're showing up in your business doing certain things, but you're really not showing up for yourself in a lot of cases because you're wearing yourself out. And
right, or you might be showing up for yourself, but are you showing up as yourself?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah.
And that's equally important. I mean, we all bandy about the word authenticity.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and how do I do it?
I know. Or everyone's copying everybody else's actions to try to show their authenticity. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
It's a crazy world. I think building a business today is, gosh, there are just so many ways to do it and so many ways to do the marketing, to show up. And I mean, it is a bit overwhelming, I have to say. So you have to make so many decisions.
It can be.
It can be, yes. I mean, obviously, that's the goal, is to try to not be overwhelmed by it. But there are a lot of choices and a lot of decisions you have to make. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And and one of those choices that you can make is, I choose to figure out how to do this in my way.
Right, exactly.
And that goes back to, what are we allowing?
Mm-hmm.
It's the passivity, right? If we feel that we have to do our work someone else's way,
right,
then in my terminology, I would say I would be allowing someone else's behavior to determine my outcome.
Right. And honestly, I've seen that fail a lot, where people adopt somebody's model because it looks successful and they try to fit themselves into that model, and it's not who they are, and it doesn't work.
And it doesn't work in dating, and it doesn't work in business.
I haven't thought about it so much in dating. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us a little about that in dating. How would you how would that show up?
It would show up very specifically in deciding on a list of attributes that your partner must have without first creating the list of your values.
Yeah.
Because when did we all learn about dating? When did we all learn about
We
the
learned about it
opposite
decades
sex?
and decades ago.
We learned about it when we
So-
were teenagers.
Yeah.
Right? We learned about it when we were teenagers. And what is uppermost, or one of the things that is uppermost in the thought of teenagers? It's how we are perceived by other people.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of men who want women who look a certain way, and there are just as many women who want men who look a certain way.
Yeah.
And the reality is, does that affect your interpersonal relationship? No. The only thing that someone's looks affects is how other people see you when they're looking at you as a couple. Right. I'm much more interested in, how do we function as a couple?
Yeah.
We have a very outside view of our relationships, so many of us. The other thing, something that has come up so frequently, and another huge turning point for me, and in able to going forward in my own relationships, and this is for friends and romantic partners as well, is, we talk about, we meet some people, we go on dates. A lot of people feel like that's a difficult stage to go on dates, but we're at the point, we have been dating, we found someone, and we both like each other enough, and we both think that there's a potential, and so I'm going to have the conversation. What's the conversation? The conversation is, are we exclusive? Right? That's the conversation. And I thought about that one day, and I said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it really mean? Honestly, being exclusive simply means neither of us is dating anyone else. So again, we're looking at our relationship based on the outside. All of that is our relationship to other people.
Yeah.
What's our relationship between each other? So when we're at the point of saying we're exclusive, what I coach my clients to do, and what I have learned, again, because we all take forward what learned our own lessons.
Right.
But the conversation to have then is, how do we function as a couple? What does that mean for us? Does it mean that we're still only going out on one date a week? We're just not dating other people? Is our time together going to change? Is the quality of our time together going to change? Hopefully.
Right.
And so I'm always trying to bring it back into authenticity is about what's going on inside and between.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you know, for one thing, I just feel like we should tell people that although, you know, this show is often, most of the time, about business and money and careers, but your love life, your relationship life, whatever, I mean, it's such a holistic thing, your life. So obviously, it's hard to feel limit-free even if your business is thriving, but your personal life is kind of dead. So, you know, it all does go together. And if you want to think in terms of abundance,
which I always do.
Yes, then it really is about everything coming together in a feeling of abundance. Because, and when you're talking about relationships, I'm also thinking about your relationship with money and how the two just parallel each other so much.
Exactly.
And even, I hadn't thought about it so much before this, but when you're talking about your relationship really being about you and the other person and leaving the outside world kind of out of it, I think is what.
Well, not 100%. I mean, we all interact, you know, with our families and with our friends and all of that. But I really am talking about not learning to view and value your relationship from you and your needs and your desires, and not worrying about what somebody else is going to think about this person.
Right.
As long, although here's a disclaimer even to that, because you know rules. There's always
rules are
something
meant to be broken.
When you have friends in your life, which I do, and I'm so grateful for my friends. Yeah. But here's another way to know if you're just repeating your own patterns, because we do have to trust our friends and we do have to listen to them. I'm not talking about having a friend who says, this is what I see in you because of him. This is, you know, are you really sure this is the right place for you? I have been in relationships where I had a very dear friend say flat out to me, you're different because of him and not in a good way.
Interesting.
So I don't mean totally cut out everybody else. I just mean, like, first and foremost, figure out how you work.
Right.
The two of
and
you.
Don't be influenced by what other people think you should be doing, or, you know, or if it makes no sense.
Or what you thought as a teenager would be a cool thing to do.
Right.
Or have.
Yeah. And I think money is the same way. I think we do that with money too.
Yep.
Because we want to show our relationship with money in certain ways to the outside world, to feel better about ourselves or whatever it is. And it may or may not be the truth. And it kind of muddies the water in terms of what you need to do with that relationship and how you need to manage your money and things like that. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And it's another thing that we're not taught in school, right? I mean, you have talked about that.
Taught any of this.
Which is why we need you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I realized all the important life things that were not taught in school when the elections were happening yesterday, because my kids and everybody else's kids that I knew were all calling their parents to say, how do I do this? You know, how do I vote? How do I, research what's on the ballot? It was really interesting. And I'm thinking, why aren't we even taught that in school? Like they knew nothing. So anyway,
and I'm really grateful. I just want to take a second and put a plug in for my parents, because I was raised with the message, you know, and we learn our messages from what we see, really, our parents do, but in addition to what they say.
Right.
But I saw, as a little child, the biggest holiday in the Ehrenberg household was Election Day.
Yeah.
That was the one day of the year that I knew we were all sitting down to breakfast as a family.
Really? Oh, I love that.
And it happened on, you know, religious holidays or other holidays as well, but I knew for sure. And as a little child, we would sit and everybody, my sister is quite a few years older than me, so she was already voting, and I was still pretty young. And I sat at the breakfast table once a year, and the three grown-ups talked about it, and then we walked down the street to the school where my parents voted for all those years, and I was a little kid, and we had the kind of voting booths back east where you have the curtain. Yeah. The curtain comes around and you know, and you pull the levers and stuff, right. And you know, that's cool, that's interactive. And so as a little child, my earliest memories were looking up and watching, and I would, you know, go back and forth between the booth my dad was in and the booth my mom was in, and they were pulling levers. And I was raised with the conviction that part of the price of my living in a democracy is that I vote and I perform jury duty without complaint.
Right, right.
And I do that, and I do that to this day, and I can just hear that my voice just changed. I can just hear what that means to me, and it pains me that children are not being taught that at home, that they're not having that modeled for them, and we're so many generations away from the fact that women died for our ability.
Yeah, I know, and and we saw a lot more women showing up, and there are a lot more women who were elected yesterday.
Exactly, I know, and that's thrilling.
I know, it is.
That's thrilling.
It definitely is.
And that's always the balance for me, too. I'm like, I don't want to keep going back to all the work we have to do. I'm so thrilled, and thank you for bringing that back around.
Well, we're talking about abundance, so we have to stay with that. So let's continue with abundance. So you have a lot of abundance in your life. You've got your TED Talk coming up. You've got so many things that you could talk about that are creating abundance. And so how do you manifest abundance in your life?
I have learned to trust. I have a spiritual practice. It's very important to me. And I know that a lot of people have their own spiritual practices and some people don't. And I will share very, very briefly that just 4 weeks ago I was meditating one morning. It was a Thursday morning. And I was meditating, and I was in a place where I just wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing the manifestation of it. But the thing about manifesting for me and abundance, when I gained the clarity that abundance is all around us, abundance is already here.
Right.
Are we seeing it or not? Are we so trained to see what's not working, that we don't see what is working? And so that's a huge part. Being able to make the shift of being able, I love Mr. Rogers always said in those moments of crisis, his mother taught him to look for the helpers. Nice. That's how we create abundance. Right. It's you're in a circumstance, you're in this situation, what do you see in this situation? Yeah. And so in this moment a few weeks ago where I was just had a moment of, I've done all this work, I've been sowing all these seeds, when am I going to be able to see it? And the thought came to me so crystal clear, wait. Wait, the harvest is coming. And it's harvest season now, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
nice.
And that lifted me up because what that also did, and the way that we do manifest, is to not, we're all going to have those thoughts from time to time, but like you just said, we can't get sucked into them. And so that thought that I had lifted me up. And I didn't go down that rabbit hole. I didn't chase that negative thought. And that's how we do it. And not 10 minutes later, I received a phone call asking me to participate in a work project. And the person who called me, I had spoken to him 2 years earlier.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And that phone call came right then after that message. And then it was later that same afternoon that I got the email from TEDx.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
And so sometimes we're that close.
Yes, that's such a good point, too, because don't people sometimes quit just like a minute before things are going to turn? I mean, sometimes there's a reason to quit. Sometimes it's valid to stop doing something that you've been doing.
Right.
But there's also, what happens a lot is that, gosh, we're just about to quit, and the success is right behind that moment.
And it's because we impose a time limit.
Interesting.
A lot, it's if it hasn't happened by now.
Well, certainly people do that in relationships too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people do it with money.
People definitely do with money. I hear all day long, oh my gosh, I'm 50 and I don't have this, 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 and this. And it's like, well,
right.
You've had certain events and that's what's happened. And, there's some of it's in your control, some of it's not. But
how do you turn that around?
But regardless, now is now. And, going forward is something you can do things differently going forward. So.
Yeah, and there's two things about time, and I had mentioned this to you earlier. The one issue about time is us deciding if it hasn't happened by now.
Yeah.
Then it's never going to, and then we quit and go do something else,
Right.
and you don't know when that phone call was going to come 10 minutes later. But for me, I mentioned time to you, and this also came out of another interview that I had heard you do, and I just am so thrilled with your focus and your viewpoint about this and about women. We are not necessarily taught to value our time.
Right.
And I wanted to share a story, something that happened to me while I was in Tucson that really illustrated for me. And this was me getting help from someone, and it changed the trajectory of how I value my time, which is I did marketing for a small architecture firm in Tucson, and part of my job, they bid on a lot of public projects.
Okay.
They did a lot of educational projects, and it was phenomenal, and I was thrilled to be a part of this organization that built schools.
Yeah, nice.
And so, but with a public project, when something has gone out to bid, there's a due date. And the due date is not simply, give it to us by Friday. Yeah. It needs to be in their offices, clocked in by whatever time they stipulate on Friday.
Okay.
And there's literally, you hand them the package, and they punch it in the time clock and validate it.
Okay.
And so, and we were in Tucson, and they bid on a lot of jobs around the area. And I remember there was a bid going out on a job that was about an hour away, a school district about an hour away. And Susan Leader, who at the time was the only woman partner in the firm, the only woman architect in the firm at the time, she came into my office. We were talking about the project. We were checking in about, were we ready? What else do I need? And I must have said something about, well, I'll be, driving it down there, so I'll have to leave by a certain time. And she said, why would you be driving it down there? Why aren't you hiring a courier service?
Yeah.
And it had not occurred to me that it would be okay for me to hire a courier service because we would have had to pay them.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And I said to her, I don't know. Yeah. But all I knew was when I went out and delivered bids on jobs and came back to the office, I worked till 9 o'clock that night if I had to finish doing the rest of my work. That's all I knew. Yeah. So she sat down. She got out. I don't know if she got out a piece of paper and a pencil or her calculator, but let's just say she did the calculations. And she said,
I love that.
We pay you this, and it'll take you this long to go down there, and it'll take you this long to come back. And at that rate, it would cost us this for you to do this, and it would cost us this for a courier to do this. and I hired a courier.
Oh, that's so smart. Yeah.
So smart, and I'm so grateful, and I hope she's listening because I've never told her before this in my life what a huge gift she gave me.
Right.
And I was in my mid-30s when this happened.
Well, you're lucky you learned it then. I talk about this to clients all the time, the value of their time, especially if they have big goals, you know, to look at that future money goal and then to evaluate, you know, what the value of their time is before they make decisions about what they're going to do or, you know, whether to hire people. That is such a great lesson. And
huge.
I'm sure after that you never thought about your time the same way.
No, and I don't even think about my leisure time the same way either. And a perfect example of that is I love to travel. I've been to so many, I'm blessed to have been to so many places around the world. I fly direct.
Yeah.
I fly direct flights.
Yeah.
Unless I absolutely, positively cannot get where I'm going, I fly direct flights.
Yeah.
I have watched people, you know, make layover over layover over layover
To save
to save, you know, a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not criticizing them at all because we all have our threshold.
Right, right.
That's the difference. We all have our threshold.
Right.
But my threshold is I'm going to have to save hundreds of dollars in order to tack on hours
Right.
of time.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, I did write a couple of notes here about some of the things that we talked about with respect to money. And gosh, there's so much to talk about, and time's going fast. So, you know, are there any specific money ideas that you feel you'd want to just mention in terms of, you know, abundance, money, relationships?
The way we think about our money is a relationship.
Yes.
The way we think about people, that's our relationships are about how we think about who we're interacting with.
Right.
I work with a coach, Brooke Castillo, and I always like to credit her for this, but she says that all of our relationships are in our thoughts. Whether
Absolutely.
someone is in front of us or not, you know that. And so it's the same thing with money. And so I will say again that one idea that I'd like to offer is I feel like my mom raised me with really good values and good actions around money.
Yeah.
And one of the first things was that when I got my first job, I was just, I'm going to save it, I'm going to save it, I'm going to save it all, and then I'll have a stockpile. And my mother said to me, you can't do that. You can't not access any of it because you're not going to feel like you're working for yourself.
That's great advice.
And you're going to eventually resent it. So she was thirds. Put a third away, use a third for current living expenses, use a third for fun.
Right, right.
And you know, and I've done that throughout my life, and it's really smart.
That is really smart. And you're right. The resentment, just like it would with another person, if you're giving all of yourself, you know, to that person all the time and not receiving very much back, you do build up some resentment. I mean, on the one hand, it's generous and it's loving, but there's a boundary there, and you know it crosses over at some point into some difficult issues.
It's very much in alignment. I also loved something that you said, which is the idea of saving for a sunny day, not only saving for a rainy day.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's when I went, oh, Michelle's my people.
Thank you.
I love that.
Well, I think you have to. With money, there's a lot of conflict, and so and it's again, it's your thoughts, it's a mindset around that, but you don't want it to always be about that rainy day or that big emergency bill that's going to show up. You know, you want it to be your friend. You want it to be there for you to support you in something charitable or something whatever that you want to, you know, want it for.
Exactly, and it's kind of like I've been able to. I'm a very good saver, and I am also a very good spender.
I love that, though, to be able to do both.
I can do both, but I'm not talking about frivolous spending either. I'm talking about when I'm in a position to save and save and save, I do that. And then when I'm in a position where I need financial support, I've got it, and I don't ever feel like, oh, I can't do this because I don't have the money for this.
Right.
I choose. It all goes back to our choice. It all goes back to our active choice and versus our inactive acts of allowing, right? Do I allow myself to feel like I can't do something because I would have to dip into savings? Or do I actively choose to say, this is what my savings are for?
I love that. And that comes up. I talk to people who they struggle over that question. You know, I'm saving. I don't even really know what I'm saving for, but I'm still afraid to use it.
Exactly.
And so
and fear, that whole thing, it just
fear.
stops us.
Right. And money creates a lot of fear, and so does dating. I mean, they both. It's interesting. So I'm sure that you're dealing with that fear component a lot. And again, it comes down to thoughts, right? The fear is just certain thoughts that we're having.
And a lot of it comes down to thinking that just because I have had certain experiences in my past that I am destined to have keep repeating these same experiences. And you said that about money too. Just because you've had debt in the past does not mean you have to have debt in your future. The parallels are, it's so true that, and again, it's about, but how do we make that change? And for a lot of people, they decide, I don't ever want to feel that way again. That person hurt me. I'm going to make sure that I never get hurt again. So what's the solution? They stop.
Right.
They stop dating.
Right.
But in 6 months or a year or 5 years, they're going to miss being in a relationship. And then what are they going to do? They're going to go back out there and try to create a relationship from the same bad beliefs that they had 5 years previously. What I would love everyone to do is, when you're in that moment of saying, I don't ever want this to happen to me again, rather than taking that to mean that you don't do that thing again, make it mean, I'm going to go out and find someone who will help me learn how to do it better.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Whether that's a financial advisor or a relationship coach or a business coach. If it's a business that I've got litter on the sidewalk of my past, of past businesses.
Of course.
But if I let that stop me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
Right.
No, I said, okay, well, I did it wrong the first 2 times. What can I do right? Oh, I know. I'm going to hire a business coach.
Yes, and that person will help you to show up in some new ways.
Exactly.
And that's really, sometimes we talked about showing up. It's hard to see how to show up sometimes yourself. And so that's a really important role of that person. We're out of time. I can't believe it. That went so fast. I feel like I didn't even blink. I really want you to help people to understand how to find you and how to contact you, and what they might be challenged by that you could help them with. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate. I loved the conversation that we had, and I loved the conversation that we just had, and I appreciate you inviting me into your space.
Oh, well,
and
thank you for
introducing me into your tribe. And so my website is lenaehrenberg.com. I've been spelling my name my entire life. It's LenaEhrenberg, and people can sign up for some tips on how to have fun dating. They can also sign up for my email list with that. And I have a page on my website called What If, and that is what I call my blog, because it's all about potential and possibility.
Nice.
So you can read some past blog posts. And on Facebook, I am at Have More Love. I am also at Foster More Love. And
Smart Girls Become Wise Women.
Smart Girls Become Wise Women. That's me all over Facebook.
And I have you too as Expansive Thought. Is that you as well?
Yes, and that's on Twitter,
And Twitter,
as well.
okay. Yeah.
Expansive Thought at Lena Ehrenberg.
Okay. And you have something called Mistress Mind. Do you want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, yes, briefly. So the whole idea, again, business has historically been defined by, men figuring it out. And a bunch of us wanted to get together and have a space to come together as a group once a month and talk about our relationships and talk about our lives and help each other, move forward. And somebody said, "Oh, it's a mastermind," and I immediately said, "No, it's a mistress mind."
Oh, I love it.
So we've been doing that for a few months with a lovely group of women, and if people are interested in finding out about that and maybe looking at putting together a different group or letting the group grow, that would be amazing as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you. It's been an honor to have you here. We didn't even touch on all the wonderful work you do in foster care. So please go to Lena's site. Do you have anything on there about that?
Not specifically, because most of the work that I do with fostering is volunteer work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she is really active and does some amazing things with the foster care system. So thank you, and thank you for listening. We love having you here. So please send any Facebook messages of comments or questions that you might have, ideas for future shows, and look Lena up online. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week. One of the most important messages I have to share with the world about the work that I do is that your work is yours to create. This is your piece of art that you can create in your life, and there's really nothing stopping you. Overall, most of us can learn what we need to learn and figure out what we need to figure out and create that fabulous career or business that we dream about, and there's really no reason to think that you can't. My name is Michelle Perkins, and I am the CEO and founder of a company called Limit Free Life, and I help men and women to make dramatic change in their lives so that they can have the fulfillment, fun, and financial prosperity that they have always wanted to find through their work. The main services I offer through Limit Free Life are one-on-one private coaching, group coaching, trainings and seminars, and business consulting. My signature service is one-on-one coaching over a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, even a year. It really allows a person to decide on an outcome that they desire, and then for us to work together to really achieve that outcome in full. The type of clients that I typically work with are professional men and women who are driven to do more, who might be entrepreneurs, but also career professionals who work in organizations, who are really looking to do more with their lives and very open to thinking in new ways about what they're doing, and who are willing to take responsibility, do the work, make some changes, and who don't say I can't a whole lot. Clients up-level in a number of ways. For some, they start a business after being in the corporate world. For others, they have an existing business and they really figure out the key and the formula to making that business grow and take off. For some, it's a matter of really developing courage. And for many, it's a matter of up-leveling their view of themselves, what they're capable of, how powerful they are, what their strengths are, and where they can go in life. What I see also is that there's a spark that kind of gets lit, and that flame keeps growing within them, and there are things that they want that maybe they were reluctant to even express that they wanted, and now they just go for it. They have bigger wants and bigger dreams than they had before, and this sense that they can achieve those things. I feel very strongly that money beliefs are foundational to developing a business that can scale and grow and become the business that you want it to be, whatever level of success that is. And for people who feel stuck or their business isn't going the way they want, a lot of times it comes back to some of these money beliefs. So as a certified money mindset coach, I have the training to help people understand where their hidden money beliefs are either interfering in their lives or businesses, or coming into play in some fashion in all the decisions that they're making, both in their business and in their life. The overall mission behind my work is to help people love their work, to find satisfaction, fulfillment, fun, and also to be financially prosperous in what they're doing. That combination to me is a perfect recipe for making work a great part of your life. And so that's my vision, is for people to see work and money as allies in their life and things they can lean on so that they have something that makes them feel important and something that gives them a place to go to develop a sense of identity and purpose and meaning in the world. My greatest hope for my clients is that they will develop a holistic relationship with work, money, and life, and there won't be this separation where they go to work and then they live their life after work, and they will develop work or businesses that they love, they look forward to going to, and they give them the freedom and the income and the happiness that they're looking for in their life.